And we are live. Welcome, Vin. Thank you so much for being here today. How you doing?
Good. Thank you, Rob. Thanks for having me. And I've got to acknowledge as well, last time I cancelled on Rob because babysitting issues. And I'm new to dad life. And I know you are too, Rob. You've
Yeah.
got two toddlers. I've got one. So life must be twice as hard for you.
Yes, and you know what? And they're 14 months apart. So
Oh,
a girl's older and a boy, and yeah, like Irish twins, as you call it there. Yeah. So,
how are
but
you smiling? That's crazy. One, I'm just like trying to smile.
yeah, I know it's keeping them
Uh,
entertained during this
yeah.
pandemic that we're going through, and all the things are happening. It's been a whirlwind, but I can say is we've bought a lot of toys.
Me too. We stopped being, kind of political about it. We just kind of go, no, it's bribes. It's what it
Yeah,
is. It's not toys. We're just bribing him now.
that's what it is. But of course, I'm still a
Yeah.
kid too, and I see some cool stuff. I'm like, let's just get that. To my wife, I just
Yeah.
thing and like, are they gonna like it or not gonna like? I think it's more for me than for the kids sometimes. But you know what? That's what being a father is. I think you really gives you the purpose and fun and things you want to do. So it's priceless. It's a priceless, and that's what we live for today. Is for our our kids and everything moving forward. But again,
Yeah.
thank you for being on here. I know we met last year, a few months back. We had a little introduction, and I was enamored. I was enthralled by your community, by everything you do, and your background and where you come from and how you created this. As I said, from coming up as a Vietnamese, right? You came up. So why don't you know what
Yeah.
you do better? You can do a better
Yeah.
background than I can do. Why don't you a little bit about yourself and a quick little synopsis about how you got here?
Well, look, I think if I was to share my background, I do have to share a little bit about my parents. So my parents escaped the Vietnam War, and they kind of made the decision to leave everything they owned behind to try to find a new home. And they actually, like, my dad became a fisherman just so that he could learn the patrol route of the Viet Cong to be able to learn when he could leave. And it was just, their story just inspires me to the max. And then, leaving everything behind in Vietnam, traveling for months on the ocean, getting stuck on a refugee island for 2 years, finally being accepted into Australia. March 31st, 1981 was when they got into Australia. And then coming to Australia with nothing,
Yeah.
and then building from nothing up to being able to give us kids and an education that I kind of didn't complete. But like, again, it was just, their story inspires me immensely. And I've only got one tattoo on my body, and my tattoo is of their journey, is, of the boat sinking, and it's just, that's, when you ask who I am, so much of it comes from my mom and my dad. So
That,
much of it comes from them.
I mean, that's inspiration. That's where the inspiration, of
Well,
sacrifice is coming.
every time I have things that are difficult in my life, I think back to their journey, and it gives me context. It gives me context. I've got to, when I moved back from the US, because I lived in the US the last 4 years, when I came to move back home, I had to do 4 weeks of quarantine. And I was in my hotel room complaining and calling my mom, going, "Oh, mom, this is bloody terrible." And then she just reminds me of, and it gives me context. I'm just like, oh, yeah, actually, it's not too bad. It's
Yeah.
context. Sometimes we all need a little perspective.
That perspective is key because myself, of course, I'm Iranian and my family immigrated here in the 70s. And, I was born and raised here in Southern California. And, I go through that. They came through a lot of sacrifices. They came,
Yeah.
the ways they got here, the little ways coming through other countries, through Mexico, through certain things to get here to live a better life. And my grandfather, tried to push all my uncles and my aunt. We had to get out of here as a teenagers, a late teens, come do education. That's what they came here with, really nothing. And they made something of themselves into entrepreneur doctors. I mean, everybody, of course, myself, my family wanted me to be a doctor or attorney or something like that. And, and now I'm in a different industry of that. But, we all we have our own ways and routes. But, again, going back to, I always come back to perspective is I had it easy too. I mean, my life compared to my family and before me, a lot more sacrifice was made but that's the foundation they built for us to be even more successful.
Yeah, and I love the theme of this show is real talk, right? And something real, I guess we can talk about is, what's interesting is, because of all that scarcity my parents
Mhm.
came up with, same with your parents, they kind of went through a lot of adversity. When it did come to the time when they could help their children, look forward into the future, because of the fear they had from the war, because of the scarcity they experienced from all the adversity, they were blinded by fear. So when they pushed me to, become an accountant, become a lawyer, become a pharmacist, become a doctor, they did that out of fear. And as a result, my parents were kind of blind to my natural talents. They were blind to the things that I was naturally good at. So to me, to connect the story for the audience, I kind of had that typical Asian upbringing. Every Wednesday was what we called in Australia called Kumon, which is math school. So after school, we go to math school. And then on Saturdays is Vietnamese school. And then on Sundays is physics and chemistry and English school. So like as kids, we didn't have weekends or anything. To us, it was just school, then more school. And then on Tuesday and Monday and Thursday and Friday, we'd go to the farm and work after school. So it was intense. And the whole time, it was so intense because our parents were living with fear. The fear of, again, we're going to go through some kind of adverse experience. So then they pushed all of us kids into things that we didn't necessarily love, things we weren't necessarily good at. So they pushed me into accounting and law. And, obviously got into it. Final year of study, I quit. Final year of commerce and law. So I did 4.5 years of a 5-year degree and I quit. And I pursued a passion instead. I pursued magic, which is so some of the Asian parents, if they're listening to this, they're probably vomiting in the back of their throats because they're like, "Oh no, what magic? No!" But that's what I did, and I've been able to build a relatively successful career out of it, and I'm very grateful for it because, and I'll probably have to tell you this. It took someone who was successful in my mum and dad's eyes. It took someone else who was successful. So to them, this was an accounting firm partner. It took that person to see the talent in me before they were able to see it. It was fascinating. And so,
that story, you have a video, I think it was which one it was?
Oh, you remember it. Wow.
You had dinner, you came to dinner and you had that, well, again, that was inspiring for me. I'm like, yeah, there are, we all have certain talents and skill set that we're kind of born with, and your skill set, what you loved and your passion was magic.
Yeah, I really did, and to me, it was just because this is how I thought of it, and I probably should share this with your listeners too. I did work experience in an accounting firm in South Australia, and every day after work, I would do magic for all the departments, admin, marketing, the accountants themselves. And then one day, this accounting firm owner came out, and it's so vivid to me. He always has his left hand in his pocket, and I didn't know why. And then one day he asked me to go into his office, and he said, "Vin, in 6 months' time, either one of these things will happen. I'll fire you, or you can quit." And I was like, "No, I need to fulfill the Asian prophecy." And he said to me, "Vin, the reason for this is because," and he pulls out his left hand, and he had terrible arthritis. He was in his mid-70s, and he said, "Vin, I gave up my passion and my love in life of playing piano so I can build this damn firm. And I regret it every day I walk in. I've regretted it every day I walked in for the last 6-7 years. You're in the wrong job. You're in the wrong career, boy." And he talked to me about how he saw the talent that I had in the world of magic, how he saw the passion that was in my eyes, and how I came to life, and how so many people in this firm that had these dead eyes, and you leave before you become one of them in a sense. Yeah. And I asked him, "Look, could you come home and tell my parents the same thing you just said to me? Because that's brilliant." And he did. And that's what I meant by the story I shared before, in that it took someone else to reveal to my parents the talents that were always there, but they were so scared to see those talents. And I think this story relates in so many different philosophical ways. Maybe there are talents you have that you're afraid to see, that you're afraid to go, maybe I am bloody good at this, but we choose security instead. Mm-hmm. And I mean, this is just my situation, but for me, I just figured, well, if I'm only going to be alive for such a short period of time, when you compare it to how long the universe has been around, your existence is just a grain of sand on the ocean. If we're only here for that long and we only get to play this game for such a short period of time, why not give it a shot and play it in a way that's going to be the most fun?
Yeah. Live no regrets.
Yeah, which is also very hard to do, but again, easy to say, very hard to do.
Yeah,
but
very hard to do, and that's the number one. I mean, as I know, you are a Gary Vee fan as well. That that is something that he really, I mean, he inspires and pushes that live. No, of course, it's very easy to say that to people, but it's to take that step
Yeah.
because there's fear, right? We all have a fear
Yeah.
of rejection, of not knowing, but unless we put ourselves out there and get uncomfortable, we are
Yeah.
never know if this is this is the direction or the trajectory we should be going. And yeah, I mean, the similarities, a lot of similarities out there. And also similar, my wife family was in Vietnam, and they escaped. They're Chinese, but
Oh,
they escaped
wow.
Vietnam and they moved to Hong
Yeah.
Kong. And they only speak fluent Vietnamese, but they also speak Mandarin and Cantonese and stuff because they're from Hong Kong. But they same thing, the humble beginnings. Like she
Wow.
went. She actually left Vietnam, went to Paris to have my wife, and then they moved to the U.S. And then same thing, same regimen of school. My tiger mom, she had
Yeah.
school ethics. There's all types of work, and she built as much as my wife just said, "Oh my God, I can't believe she made me do all this when I met." Now it's like she's successful, but I'm like, all that groundwork that she did for your education is who you are today. She
Yeah.
built this discipline and structure and everything in you. As much as you thought it was so hard, I had no life, I had no friends, or I just studied.
Yeah.
Look at this now, and and these are
Yeah.
things. Sometimes we don't put those things into perspective, and that's something that you talk about so much is perspective and looking at
Yeah.
different things in different ways. But I would like to get into a little bit about your magic, your passion,
Yeah.
and how this has transitioned into today's communication tool, education, keynote speaker. All this is what you've done. Yeah.
So yeah, it just still feels a bit ridiculous. But you see, with magic, the reason I love magic, first of all, is because I remember my first experience of seeing a magician, and it was a busker. I think that's what they call it in the US too. But it was just someone in Australia that we were in the city as a family, and I saw this person who was busking for money and performing, and the people would give him money. And then I just kind of hung around afterwards. And to me, when I first saw magic, this defied all rules of reality to me. Because as a kid, you grow up, there are rules. You throw a ball and it goes up and it drops down. I mean, you don't know it's physics, but you just realize these are rules of reality. And this was the first time I saw someone bend the rules of reality. And I went, wait, what? How can you make that card suspend in midair? These are not the rules of life. Like, well, I'll take a card, I throw it just drops down. So to me, it was the first time that I started to get exposed to the concept that, is reality negotiable? Like, we accept so many things like, oh, okay, so that's the way it is, I guess. And then we live the rest of our lives with that is a rule that must be applied to all areas of life. And it was just like, I never met anyone that could supposedly defy, it's an illusion. But the concept of it was so appealing to me because I was so unhappy with my life. Because growing up as a kid, Rob, I was kind of the textbook loser. I didn't get attention from any of the ladies. I didn't really have many friends. And like every time I tell this story to my class, when I teach my classes, they go, oh, that's nonsense. It's not true. And then I show them pictures of me when I was 12 and 8 and they go, oh, okay. Yeah, I see it. but that was who I am. So magic, philosophically, when I was a kid, wow, maybe maybe life doesn't have to be the way it is. Maybe it is negotiable. And then when I did magic and started performing it, kids would be like, wow, you're amazing. And they gave me attention that I never had before. So to me, magic kind of saved me as a kid. It gave me confidence I didn't have. And it gave me a mindset that allowed me to believe that anything truly can be possible. And as trite as that sounds and as cheesy as that sounds, I believe it.
Yeah, I give you the affirmation that you belong, and and that's the self-esteem, and everything comes, and it empowered you to to work on that skill and to keep moving forward and achieve as you say, it would be impossible. How do you move those cards like this? How do you do this? How do you defy gravity?
Yeah.
Things, right?
And this is the interesting thing, right? Because I've had many deep conversations with this with my close friends, and we say that, it's all well and good to say anything is possible. It's all well and good to say you can achieve anything you desire. And then we always get to the point where we go, but is that actually true? And then to me, I always think, well, the truth of that statement is not as important as how you live your life if you believe anything to be possible. So let's say we get to the end of our lives and we meet the higher beings above, and they go, Vin, that was a load of nonsense. Anything isn't possible. You were wrong and you spread the wrong message. To me, in my mind, I still think, well, like, what's the alternative way to live? To believe that nothing is possible for you? So even if that statement is not true, I still believe it to be a useful belief. And it's a useful belief because then it dictates you to live in a certain way that helps you maximize the time you have here. So to me, again, it's funny because when we talk about this, I always have that back of the voice in my head going, it's not true. Anything isn't possible, you idiot. But then to me, it's like, well, no, you're an idiot in my mind. That I choose to have this as a belief because it's useful and it helps me live a more fulfilling life. So whether it's true or not, I think it's a useful belief.
Yeah, I mean, you took magic to the ultimate level. I mean, you took it to stage performances and winning awards, correct?
Yeah, I did. And there's a key lesson in that.
Uh-huh.
You see, as a magician, I spent thousands of hours building my sleight of hand ability, which represents technical skill, technical knowledge, and technical experience, right? And I think this is relevant to maybe a lot of the listeners too, in the sense that we spend an awful amount of our time in our careers building technical skill. This is what formal education has taught us. The better you get technically, the more successful you become. This wasn't true in the world of magic, because the better I got technically, that didn't automatically amount to more success. It didn't actually amount to any success until I learned a critical component. And it's actually right here. But it wasn't until I read this book, which is called Strong Magic by Darwin Ortiz. Mm-hmm. It's a phenomenal book. There are thousands of books written about how you can improve your technical skill. There's about 8 or 9 good ones written about an area called showmanship. And showmanship in the world of magic is just the fancy word for communication skills. I was not being modest here, but I was a 10 out of 10 when it came to technical ability. But my ability to communicate was a 3 out of 10. And the reality you have to ask yourself is, if you can only communicate as a 3 out of 10, do you think people perceive you to be a 10 out of 10 or a 3 out of 10? And the reality is you're only as good as you can communicate. So to me as a communicator, I was terrible. So until I built my showmanship or my communication skills, the world didn't see the brilliance that I had to offer. Which is why it compelled, like, the reason I had the speaking career and the reason I had the performance career and those things took off is not because I was only technically good. It was because I started to build my ability to communicate, which led to, again, a speaking career, something I almost did not intend. I accidentally fell into it. And the reason the speaking career took off was because of the communication ability I had on stage. So it's kind of interesting. And I asked the listeners who are listening to reflect on that too. What about for you? You may be technically brilliant, but have you worked on the communication skills to help you amplify that brilliance?
Yeah, and stop you right there. That's very powerful. It's inspiring. But you're right, the technical ability, even in the business that I'm in is electronics. We have a lot of engineering. We have a lot of, product selling and design and supply chain. But, but the engineers, it's funny, is like we deal with a lot of principal engineers who make this component that goes into this thing that can create efficiency and this, and then they have salespeople trying to sell it who really don't know it. But the engineer is the best. That's what we found out. The engineer becomes the best salesperson. They don't know it because they have the passion. And I always tell them, like, you know what? I tell, like, the principal of the company, I'm like, hey, why don't you just come and do it instead of the salesperson? Because you can answer every question, it, and you can also lead by example to those people to see how the passion is there. You're the best salesman because you are the inventor. And it's just communication skills that, because they're just so focused on engineering, they don't practice the communication or practice that skill set.
Well, there's always this argument I hear often as I was traveling around and teaching this. Used to travel around and teach this. Now you just do it from a studio. But when I would, there would always be this argument during Q&A where people say, look, Vin, if you had to make a decision, what do you think is more important? Is technical skill more important or is communication skills more important? Which one's more important? And I feel like I always tell them, well, why do I have to pick one? Because the answer is both. And one is not more important than the other. They are both equally important. So to me, if we want to become more well-rounded and we want to thrive instead of just surviving, we want to, you hear people say, oh, how do I take my life to a different trajectory? To me, it's both. If you can become technically brilliant and you can also become an expert communicator or a masterful communicator, those two things combined, it's a superpower. And you think about the brilliant engineers that you have. You think about the co-founder or the person who the originator of this new technologies. Imagine if they gained that ability to communicate masterfully. Life changes very quickly. Not only, and here's the thing, not only professionally does life change, but personally it does too. When I learned to improve my ability to communicate, it wasn't only that we started winning awards on stage as a magician or getting booked for speeches and becoming a speaker, but heck, my personal life improved. I was better able to articulate the value that I had to offer others in my life. I was better able to articulate the love that I felt, the appreciation that I feel. Whereas before that, I never expressed any of those things because I felt it, but I didn't know how to get it across to another human being. So to me, not only is this beneficial for us in our professional lives, this improves your personal life, which then allows you to flourish more in your professional life. So to me, it's why I say it's the tide that lifts all boats. It's the one skill that amplifies everything else.
I could not agree more. I was always I'm an introvert, Jen. I'm an introvert. It feels like you're not an introvert. I am. I am an introvert. I get into things and I just, but getting into sales or leadership and those things, it took me outside my comfort zone and I got nervous, but I had leaders, I had good people, inspiration, mentors, but I had to put in the reps. I had to understand communication. I had to know how to gauge the room. I had to, just like you say, your showmanship. I go into a conference, I had to see, because some people don't want to smile. They don't know if they're engaged or they like what you're saying or they don't. Especially because I was traveling to Asia a lot. I don't even speak English. English is a second language. China, they don't speak, all Southeast Asia. And I was traveling to areas that I didn't know the culture as well. And I was trying to fit in, but through the times of putting in that hard work and discipline, sacrifices of putting myself in those things, making a lot of mistakes, throwing my foot in my mouth, I learned to adapt, and survey the room, understand what hits, what doesn't, and get to the point. Because at the end of the day is you need to get to the point quick. And one thing that I loved, but I want you to discuss about is the story. It's telling the story. And that's how, because I have to present the company, I have to tell a story that really connects. So that's really getting into that public speaking stage is really about storytelling. And can you tell us a little bit about how that has worked for you, how that has evolved?
Well, before we even go to that, just one step back, storytelling again is how we build connection.
Yeah.
Storytelling is how you and I are able to get to a deeper level of conversation and build rapport. And storytelling is just not for the stage. It's for one-on-one. It's for 1 to 2, 1 to 3. Storytelling is what the difference between, you can think of this. When we used to be able to go to restaurants, you sit at a restaurant and you see there are couples who are just on their phone. And then you see couples who are speaking. And you see couples who are conversing, engaged. The ones that are engaged, they're storytelling with each other if you listen closely. And then they deepen their level of connection. So let me give you you remembered a story that I told on a video you watched, goodness, we don't know how long ago. The reason you remembered that story about the accountant that then caused me to tell it here is because it's sticky. If I asked your listeners right now, which hand did the accountant hold in his pocket? Was it his right or his left? You'd remember it's his left hand. Mm-hmm. And you remember that I asked him to go to dinner with my parents. You remember all these things and you remember passions that he gave up. You remember because storytelling is sticky. So what that means in technical speak, I guess in your world, is when you storytell, it takes up more hard drive space in the audience's mind. And the more hard drive space you take up in the audience's mind, whether it's one or many, means the deeper of a connection they feel to you, which equates to rapport. People feel like they like you because you take up more hard drive space. Otherwise, you just become, oh shit, it's Vin, the sales guy. I don't want to talk to him. But that's because that's all that I am. All I am is a sales guy to you. But the moment I take up more hard drive space in the customer's mind, oh no, it's not Vin, the sales guy. That's just one thing that he does. But here's Vin, the salesperson who left accounting and then pursued magic and then built a Keynote career and had parents who escaped the war. All of a sudden, this is the humanization of a salesperson. Because if you're in sales and you don't storytell, you are not humanizing yourself, which has a deep impact on your conversion rates. So to me, as human beings, not only in sales, but just to broadly apply this to most people, we need to learn how to storytell more so that we feel more fulfilled and nourished as we connect with other human beings. It's one of the reasons why sales has such a high burnout rate, a high, again, it's like a high turnover industry is because people say it's not fulfilling. It's not fulfilling because we're not engaging in deep relationships. And a huge part of that is learning how to storytell, learning how to do it well, take up hard drive space.
I love it. That was it. That's a mic drop thing right there for me. You hit it right
Okay.
there. You nailed it. And I cannot agree more. I cannot
Yeah.
agree more, because sometimes we just, in any industry, anything, even at sales, because in my opinion, we're all in sales. Everybody is a teacher.
Everyone's in sales. Yes. 100% true.
Is it? And today, living in a virtual world, it's more and more human connection, is there, because we can't really visit each other. So this video is there. And that storytelling of telling of our always sharing the pandemic, the COVID crisis, that really elaborate, like, how are you doing? What's going on? Telling the story, like, I had COVID. How did you? I mean, these are the types of things that you remember of each other. And I love, the similarities that you have of what you discuss. But another topic that maybe I jumped a little forward was the communication and your instrument that you use. That's really nailed it there.
Yeah, and to make it relevant to our conversation, I guess there was a point in our conversation where you said, you're very introverted, right? I'm extroverted and introverted. I feel like I'm both. I need time myself to recharge, but also recharge around others. So I'm a hybrid.
Yeah.
Now, mixed breed. But this is what I would say. I have a lot of my students who come up to me, especially those who are introverted. A lot of the times they're in technical roles, a lot of engineers. And they come up to me, they say, Vin, is there a difference between how an introvert would use their voice and an extrovert? Because some of the things you make me do, I feel like it's not natural to me. And I say, okay, I have a question for you in return. Question for a question. Does it make a difference if you're an introvert or an extrovert if you're a pianist and you're playing in an orchestra? Does it make a difference? The answer is no. The foundations of how to play the piano beautifully, whether you're an introvert or an extrovert, is the same. So there's no real difference. Just because you're an introvert, you have to use your voice in a different way. No, that's in your head. That's an illusion. It's not real. And then I have to address one more thing, because then they say, oh, Vin, but it doesn't feel natural. I'm an introvert. Vin, normally I speak like this. But you're asking me to do things like this and it feels wrong. And I say, no, it's not fake. It's not phony. It's not wrong. It's all in your head. And I simply explain this analogy to them that helps them shift the mindset. The music and piano helps you shift the mindset that how you use your voice well, whether you're an introvert, extrovert, it's the same. The foundations are the same. Now, when it comes to the fake and phony thing, I say to them that, well, look, let's stick with the piano analogy. A piano has 88 keys. And what's happened in your life is you've got very comfortable playing with these 12 keys over here. So when I ask you to do this with your voice, you go, oh, it's fake and phony. I go, no, it's not fake and phony. You're just unfamiliar with those keys. It's still your voice. There's nothing fake and phony about it. If you can make the sound, it's you. And they've just got to get out of their heads. It's not fake and phony. It's just unfamiliar. So what I do is I help them become more familiar with their keys, to become more familiar with using a stronger volume. And you watch that shift happens. And the most fulfilling thing for me as a teacher is when I see a student come to me from all over the world, when that switch happens and they go, wow, my voice is an instrument. And I've just gotten very familiar with these 12 keys over here. And I've just been playing my instrument like this, but I have access to all of these different keys. And when you see that happens in their eyes and in their mind, life changes for that person in that moment. Because now they can play songs where people can feel the love that they're trying to express. Whereas before, you can say you appreciate someone. You can say, hey, I really appreciate you. Or you can say, hey, I really appreciate you. What you did, wow, that saved me so much time, Rob. Thank you. There's more to words than you think. Words are the music notes on the music sheet. How you play those music notes has an impact on how people receive them. And then when you start to use that analogy, and I can talk about this for days, Rob, but that's when I start to say to my students, it's an instrument. And my singing teacher used to say all the time, and I'm not a singer, I go to singing classes to learn how to use the voice. But my singing teacher used to always say, if you can't play it beautifully, then don't play at all. And to me, that is so true. I mean, every time you speak to someone, you go to pour gas in your car, or in Australia we say petrol, so pour petrol in your car. But no matter where you go, the grocery clerk, whatever you do, when you speak, you have the opportunity to move that person in an inspirational way, in a happy way, or in a deeply miserable way. And just think about this. You could listen to a song and it moves you. You can listen to a sad song and you feel sad. You listen to a happy song, you feel happy. You are doing that every time you open your mouth with your children, with your wife, with your husband, with your family, with your coworkers, with your team, with your customers. What is the melody that lives underneath your voice? How are you playing?
I cannot agree more in everything you said. It's and the world of tonality and all that tones and
Yeah.
excitement. But one thing that I put in perspective and look back as technology has taken some of that communication that we had all the time in the last 10, 15 years and make it into black and white text. Everything is now
Mm.
communicated over a device. We message each other. We don't even, I mean, everybody probably listens. Like we just, instead of calling people, we just text them. We don't even ask
Yeah.
questions. We just text them. And that emotion, that tonality, what you're coming across could be sarcasm, could be, fear, could be emotion. It doesn't really come across with emojis. You can't get that across. And that's really what's, in my opinion, has really separated things. I mean, you see it even walking around, people at the dinner table or in the restaurant, they're just texting each other. They might be texting the
Yeah.
same thing in the same screen, but they don't even
Oh
talk.
gosh, I hope not.
It's that disconnect of human interaction, that social skill ability of using that tool, practicing those reps on that tool, because then it starts creating insecurities because we're not confident with our voice or our instrument. We're just confident. We can speak very well on a tool, on an electronic tool, but we can't in person because we haven't practiced it enough. And that's, I think this pandemic, in my opinion, has really changed that. And now we realize, accelerate all the technology of virtual. This is it. Okay, now we're speaking more. A lot of people in our industry have said they have more interactions now than they ever have virtually than they ever have before. Usually it was just phone calls or emails. Now, because
Yeah.
they want to see the other person, they want to connect to them. They're building stronger relationships due to the
Yeah.
fact we were just behind a black and white text that's just, our minds don't read it with emotion when we read an email. Our minds, we don't read it. It's just, but if someone sends you a video message or someone wants to do a virtual call, that emotion is there, and it completely, it's changing the world slowly. People don't know there's some positives coming out of the situation we're in. And we have to address those and look at them and put that into perspective.
And look, that was what's so brilliant about you reaching out to me. I mean, I get a lot of people emailing me to ask me to do things. I have to admit, I feel like a terrible monster, but I don't open all of them. And I opened yours because it was a video.
Yeah.
Right. And that's the thing. We've got to get more creative. And to the point of what you said, Robin, it's that the equivalent of sending a text in the world of music, if we just continue with this analogy for us, wee bit longer, is that you're just going, hey, I wrote you a really cool song. I'm not going to play it for you, but here's the notes. Just read it. And then you're expecting the person to look at it and just read the notes. And to them, like, there could be so much more that you could express. It's why with every single app that I use, whether it's a LinkedIn or whether it's Facebook or Instagram, when someone DMs me, sends me a private message, I, as often as I can, try to reply with a voice message. And then people are shocked. They're like, whoa, I can't believe you did this. But to me, I can express so much more emotional meaning. You can feel the words that I say. You can feel connected to me when I do that. Whereas otherwise, as far as you're concerned, that could have just been an automated message that was sent. So to me, look, this is the competitive advantage right now. And if you look at it from a very kind of business standpoint, what's a competitive advantage right now? It's the ability to build connection through virtual communication. And if you can build deep connections fast, and if you could build rapport like this, that's a critical skill. That's a critical skill. And it's a skill. And it's just that. That's what it is. And I often, when I run my classes, my students don't believe that I used to be a terrible communicator. So I found video of me about 6-7 years ago, and I play it for them, and they go, damn. And they think I'm faking it in the video. And I'm like, oh, that's so tragic because it wasn't faking. But it's a skill that can be learned. Like anything else, it is just a skill. We've got to stop putting people who are great communicators on the pedestal and start putting the lessons that have made them who they are on the pedestal. Because you can learn them too.
I agree. From my end, is like I always tell people, you got to put in the reps. It's like playing sport, putting everything You got to put in the reps,
Mm,
or you're never going to
that's
be
right.
able to enhance that skill set. And that was
Yeah.
for myself. We came back, I mean, pre-pandemic in 2019, one thing that my friends around me, network around me, people are like, your life is so fascinating. Like, you travel over the world, you visit all these countries, all these cultures. Why don't you show people what you do? I mean, because that's what I'm like. He's like, you got to do this for marketing. People see like who you really are. They'll connect with you because you're
Yeah.
telling a story, kind of vlogging. And I started jumping into that late 2009, third, fourth quarter 2019. I'm like, start taking pictures, going like India, visiting a big factory, showing them the landscape and talking about what we're doing, having fun with it. And
Yeah.
coming into Q1 of 2020, we got in ourselves in the, and I'm like, everything was full speed. So I'm like, but I had a fear because this camera, this camera in front of me scares a lot of people. It scared me. Even it took
Scared
me,
me too.
yeah, it scared me too. I mean, just looking at it in the beginning, like, oh, like I wanted to tell the story about the company and how it founded. It took me about 100 takes because I kept forgetting my words, forgetting what I was intimidated by. But if it
Yeah.
was an audience behind me or people behind me, it would have been, I was more comfortable instead of the camera. And that's the thing, is I had to get over the fear. I put in a lot of reps.
Yeah.
And you put in the reps to get over that fear. And then sometimes it's like, okay, I just don't, I look through the camera now. I don't actually look at the lens, which I used to before. You learn that. You
Yeah.
just look through it. You look through the other side, like there's people there. And you learn
Yeah.
these skills but the only way you learn them is to fail and get
Yeah.
yourself back up and over and put in the reps. And I'm still, this is my 25th or 26th podcast that I've done. I'm getting better from the first one till now. Things are getting better. It's getting more.
Yeah.
My vision was always community. I feed off, just like you said, I'm an introvert, but I feed off others. When I go into that, that's where my energy comes, or I get quiet. If nobody talks to me, I just don't say a word. And I feel
Mm.
that. So I go into a room, I energize, I get energy from people, and it gets me going. And then when I traveled the world, I traveled visiting. That's where my energy, I'm like, I need to vent. I need to get this energy out of connecting with people like yourself, connecting. I just started reaching out to people. You want to talk? You want to have a podcast? You want to do this? Let's get on a call. A lot of, and it was very fascinating how many people at high executive levels were all okay, but the people middle or lower had a fear, and everybody at top, because everybody wants to tell their story. Everybody has a story to tell, and
Yeah.
share, especially during what we're going through. There's a lot of story back
Yeah.
and comes to marketing, communication, and that. So, anyways, I want to share that little bit about that. See, that's my
That's
experience.
beautiful.
I've
Yeah.
really, really felt, and but when I ran into you, and I'm like, wow. Not only am I enamored by the accent, the Australian, like British that
It's
you
not
have.
even real.
It's not even, yeah, it goes through.
No, I'm kidding. It is.
You get taken in. It's a tool, right? You use that
Mm,
tool,
mhm.
and you want to quantify. Hey, you
Yeah.
have this. I mean, right? And hey, people right away can connect. Oh, sounds different from a basic American accent. Oh, it's a little more deeper, the tonality, and it comes like, and you've enhanced it because you've had it all your life, and now like I'm using it to event. I enhanced it, so that really comes into that instrument that we have, that we all sometimes, as I said, this tool in the last 10, 15 years has really, my opinion is, has suppressed a lot of our instruments.
Yeah. Well, and out of that fear that a lot of people have for the camera, the reason we fear it is not just because of the camera. We fear it because once we record what we record, hundreds of people can see it. We fear the judgment that comes as a result of putting ourselves out there. We fear the comments. We fear not getting likes. We fear these things. And I feel like, these fears, while they're justified, if you don't overcome them, they'll hold you back. I often think to the moment of when I left my degree in accounting and I left that job and I quit. What if I didn't? What if I was so scared? And I was scared. I didn't know that I was going to have this brilliant career. I didn't know that at that moment. At that moment, to me, I was letting go of everything that I know. And it was funny because I wrote a post about this the other day to my mailing list. And I wrote that, I've been teaching my son how to climb on the monkey bars, right? And it's been such a cool experience teaching him how to climb the monkey bars. I've actually let him fall a few times, just to let him know what it's like when you fall. And it was a hard decision. But to me, the key lesson that my son had to learn in order to climb the monkey bars was he had to learn that in order to get to the next monkey bar, I have to let go of the previous monkey bar. Otherwise, I don't progress through this jungle gym. And he was so afraid to let go, and he just kept hanging on, kept hanging on. But until he learned that I must let go before I can move forward and face the fear of letting go and only hanging with one arm, I can't progress. And I thought, wow, this is such a beautiful analogy for life. We are all climbing through the monkey bars of life. And sometimes we are so afraid to let go of the previous bar and catch the next one that we stay where we are and we don't move forward. And the reality is we have to address that the future is uncertain. It is scary. We have to acknowledge that with people. It is scary. I used to be scared of the camera. Again, people don't believe it, but again, I have video to prove it to you. And in that, you have to remember that if you don't let go, what life won't you live? Where will you not be in the future? Where will you not be if you don't face the fears you have now? You know, it's like Tarzan in the jungle. He has to let go of one vine before he can catch the next. What vine do you need to let go of? And that made me reflect. And I thought, well, what are some things I need to let go of this year in 2021 so that I can move forward? And you get to decide what that is for you. And if it's the camera, trust me, it's not as scary as you think.
Wow, I'm gonna have to steal that analogy. That was
Yeah,
fantastic.
use it. Go for it.
Oh, it's funny because I'm thinking of myself and my daughter and my son who would like the monkey bars, and I just because
Yeah.
I built a little gym in my home gym in a garage, and they
Me
love
too.
the monkey bar. They they love to
Yeah.
hang on it and doing tricks, but
Yeah.
but they have to fall and they have to learn. And these are things that even when my daughter was swimming, she had no fear. She didn't know how to swim. She kept jumping in the water. I told her, you know what? Let's just let her understand that she didn't like taking lessons, so she just wanted to jump. And I'm like, she's got to learn that you're gonna start choking if you start. I'm gonna leave her in there for yeah. These are things that you teach because you have to get that over that fear.
It's the same thing. Like my son swimming, like we've got a pool, right? So it's like he always had his floaties on. So he would just jump in. He loved it. And I'm like, honey, this is so dangerous because we're protecting him too much. And he doesn't know that without the floaty, he will sink. We're giving him a false idea of what reality is. So the first time we just had to, like, I was right there and he jumped in and he sank for a moment and he was like, what happened? And now he knows. But to me, it's not about just being, this is what I always struggle with as a parent. And you can tell me if you struggle with this. I am scared that I will rob my son of his drive because of my success. What made me was adversity. What made me was scarcity, poverty. That's what made me, Rob. And now that I'm more successful, I give my son everything. A part of me is like, I never want you to suffer. But to me, without suffering, we do not grow. Without adversity, we do not become distinguished human beings. So to me, I'm so scared of this. That's why, like, the idea of letting him fall, I have to let you fall. Because if I rob you of all adversity, you won't become something great. It's just such a thing I struggle with as a parent.
I share that. My wife and I share that same sentiment, and we talk about that all the time. Because
yeah, we do too.
My wife came from very humble beginnings compared to myself, but I still talk about this, and it's like we give them. We have love. It's the love that we want to give them. We want to share. Like we have this.
Yes.
We have a very fortunate for what we have. We should be, and we want to. They want something. They want to go to the store. Okay, they want something. Okay, they can have. These are things that we never. It's hard to say no sometimes because.
Yeah.
But you're right. There's a rob them of the drive. They want to be better. They want to be something. They want to try something, because and it is something that as a parent, what is right or wrong? That's the thing. As a parent, as a leader, as everybody leads people, because you're a leader. As a parent, you're leading. As a business owner or as a leader in an operation, you're a leader and you're leading people. And sometimes you want to protect them. You want to. Sometimes you just swipe it under the rug. Say, "Oh, it's okay. It's okay. We'll fix this." But did they learn? Did they fail? And these are the types of things.
Well, you're exactly right. It's I've got team members. I've got a small team that I work with, and it's so easy. It's the same mindset to go, oh, I want to make it easy as possible for them. Oh, they didn't succeed at this particular proposal that we sent through. That's okay. Let's just kind of soften the landing. But I think when you soften the landing all the time, people are no longer going to push themselves. You know, I feel like it's one of those things where it's one of the hardest things of being a leader, whether you're a parent or you're running a business, is that you can't always protect people, because if you do, you rob them of their own personal growth journey, their personal development journey. So yeah, it's just something that as a parent, it's the hardest thing I think a parent has to do, is to let a child fall. But to me, it's one of the most important things we have to do as a parent. It's yeah, one of the, and as a business owner, I think it's difficult too. Yeah. Way more difficult as a parent.
Yeah, yeah, way more difficult. Yeah, because it's all. I mean, it's so many similarities between parenting and eating and
running a business. Yeah,
running a business. It's so many similarities because it's all like family, and that's how we run. Our business is a family. It's all family that going forward. But one thing I want to get to also with you is to discuss a little bit about stage right behind you. I see the V and the G of your initials, and how this was developed during the pandemic or right before, or how did this come about?
Yeah, this was developed about 2016 is when I created Stage. Okay. And the reason I created Stage was because, and the reason there's a V and a G in my logo, there's more to it than that. It's not just for egotistical reasons. It's because there are 5 stages. I've created a program. I've created Stage 1. I've finished writing Stage 2. And in my life, I want to create 5 stages, 5 different programs. That's why there's a V there. Okay. I put a lot of thinking into it. It's kind of gross. But this is the thing. When I was in 2016, I reached a peak in my career that I never thought I'd be able to reach. You know, I was speaking around the world and all this. I went, wow, this is amazing. But I also felt deeply unhappy. One of the most depressing times of my life was May 2016. I remember I felt like I was on top of the world and things were amazing, but I felt this huge sense of emptiness and lack of purpose and lack of drive at that point. And I went away for 7 days by myself. I said to my wife, look, there's no other woman, I promise. I'm going away because I'm in trouble and I need to sort myself out. And I realized that in my whole life, Rob, I've never spent 7 days by myself for myself. And when I realized that, I freaked out a little bit. I went, wow, I've lived this life in service of my parents, in service of, my wife now. And when have I taken 7 days out for myself? By myself, though. I've never done this. So I did it. I went to New Zealand. I went up, hired this Airbnb on top of a mountain and just stayed by myself. And during that time is when I created Stage. It's when I realized that I've learned this skill to be able to communicate more effectively for myself. And I built an amazing career, an amazing business. I was lacking contribution. And in my heart, I've always wanted to be a teacher, but I was afraid to be a teacher. So I thought, you know what, stuff it. Found my purpose on the top of a mountain in New Zealand, came back and created Stage as a program where I teach people how to communicate more effectively. I teach people this skill that has helped me live such an amazing life. And I went, wow, the fulfillment that I starve, I'm not going to wait until it finds me. I will seek it. So then I did singing classes to refine my knowledge in voice. I did speech pathology. I went to meet with speech pathologists to learn about behavioral change. And then I created Stage. I created Stage as a 3-day program that people would come and experience from a Friday through to a Sunday. And that's what I created. I ran it for years, and it was one of the most fulfilling things I do. And it's also one of the most frightening things that you will do. But to me, this is the opportunity to face fear. This is the opportunity to finally face this fear that has been bugging you your whole life and learn how to use this instrument to sing songs of kindness, to sing songs of compassion, to sing songs of change. I mean, you look at the world, you look at the political landscape. There are people who use their instrument for good, and there are people who use their instrument for not so good. And that's because a lot of people are afraid to use their instruments. More than ever, we need good people to learn how to master their instruments so we can sing songs of change. We can sing songs of much needed change all around the world. But you've got to step up, and you have to realize the power behind your instrument. So to me, Stage is a program where We learn about voice. We learn about breath. We learn about storytelling, how to do it. We learn about body language. We learn about all of these things once and for all. And yeah, I've turned it virtual now. So what you see currently is my studio, and it's usually I'll throw it, but usually we'd use the full studio, and I teach in my virtual studio my students. So now instead of being a 3 full day course, it's a 2-hour session, but 2 hours for 5 days consecutively. So 10 hours in total. So that's what it is. And thanks for letting me talk about that, Rob.
No. I loved it because that was the first time I met you. You showed your studio. You did a little of magic. You talked about communication. You talked about the entertainment part about it, like the 33, basically 3 parts of it and how it works. And it was fascinating how well, because as I said, those back earlier being how you've transitioned to virtual. Can you? How was that transition for you? I mean, because no one was prepared for it. Was it a little challenging in the beginning, or okay, I'm doing this and I'm moving forward and doing this and setting the stage and everything?
Well, since we're doing this improv, let me show you something. I'll just hook this up and I'll show you.
Okay.
What I'm about to show you is the evolution of what I've gone through, and it's so easy to see the final product. When people see the studio that I have, they go, "Oh wow, that's amazing! I wish I had the same thing." But again, people don't see they don't see the steps before. So every time I do something now, I'm so conscious of capturing the before, so that to show people I'm the same as you. So just let me bring this up, and I'll I think you'll find this quite hilarious. Okay. So the first time I went virtual, I did not come across like this. The first time I went virtual to my clients, I'm very fortunate. I have clients who reward me very well for doing these virtual sessions. And I said, look, don't worry, I can come to you virtual. I'll come like this. That's fine. Don't worry. And I remember the first time they said, look, Vin, if you're doing a virtual full presentation for us to 10,000 of our people, we want you to push the boundaries a bit. And I thought, that's okay. I'll stand. That's all right. I can stand. It's all good. And they kind of went, yeah, Vin. And then, I kept pushing the boundaries. And then I thought I needed books behind me because I needed to look more intelligent, right? And yes, I used to be a blonde. And then I kept pushing it more. And then I built a studio and I went, but I need the camera to be better. Oh, okay. But then when I got the camera right, the lighting looked like the bloody Godfather. So I was like, what? So then I got the camera and then the lighting right. And then, what you see now is then I learned backdrop design. I learned backdrop lighting. I learned more and more and more. What you see currently in front of you before when I was throwing to the studio, not lit properly right now, but what you see is iteration 12, iteration 13, which I want to share with people. I have one simple philosophy, and it's a Japanese philosophy that is called Kaizen, which is the relentless pursuit of perfection while knowing that perfection is not attainable, yet you pursue it anyway. And simply put, every time I do something, Rob, it must be 5% better. And don't compare yourself to me, because I sure as hell don't compare myself to any of you. Just keep comparing yourself to you yesterday. You as a salesperson, what are you doing today that's better, 5% better today? And to me, that studio kind of evolution that I showed you was me going, how can I make the studio better? How can I improve my ability to deliver virtually better? Keep asking yourself that question. Because to me, what, again, you see today, I just did a session for a couple of hundred speakers around the world, just showing them my setup. And again, they just were like, wow, this is amazing. I'm like, look, thank you for the wows. It makes me feel good inside. But look, you can do this too. Stop putting me on the pedestal, but put the philosophies and lessons that I've used to get me to where I am, put that on the pedestal. And don't let the final product overwhelm you, because this is the classic thing that happens. People see it and they go, oh yeah, he can do it, but I can't. No, you can. You absolutely can, but it's just one step at a time, 5% at a time.
I love it, because I went to a similar iteration and I'm evolving. We built a studio. I was doing it in an office in our thing. I did it outside. I was having conference calls. And you have to lead by example. As a leader, lead by example. I'm like, I had to really say, hey guys, we need to get cameras. Everybody needs to get a better camera. We have better lighting, especially if I want to do something as a pod. We have to have no trade shows. So we took that budget, built a studio. We built a little studio, and people are like, what are you doing? What are you building this? And that's why this behind me, the camera won't wield, but it's all what I've brainchild, where I have a podcast in, I can have, but I had no idea. As I say, people realize I had no idea what I was getting myself into. I'm I had a friend who had a full studio. He just gave me a list of equipment. I bought it. I'm like, okay, I'll buy it all. Throw it together and figure it out, because how do you do the video editing, audition, these type of StreamYard, live stream? How do you the internet? How do you do the logos? And people don't realize you just have to start somewhere, and there's
Yeah.
failure. You don't through it, and you start fine tuning it, and you have different iterations and revisions, and start improving it. And these are things not just with the studio setup, but yourself, the Kaizen way, the Japanese way. You start improving
Yeah.
yourself. You start putting your surroundings, and you lead by the example to show others around you that it's possible. And we're all equal. We're all humans. We're all equal. We're just
And
risk.
and that's the thing. As you push the boundaries, as you improve yourself, you inspire others around you. You know, and I think that's so powerful. You know, when we want to inspire others around us, the way to do it is to work on you.
Yep.
You know, and often we think, oh, how do I inspire others? Well, as a leader, be better, grow as a leader, improve as a leader. And as you do that, naturally you inspire those around you.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And that's one thing. So going back to the stage and how you set that up, how has it transitioned with your business now? Is it business? I mean, do you have growth in this business? Is it more efficient? Yeah, so you don't travel as much. You can do everything from a studio now.
Well, it's funny because what the business that I'm in is, if you technically named it, it's called it's a thought leadership practice.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's what I'm in. I'm in the thought leadership practice world. And you know, before, the way I would share my thought leadership is I would travel to my clients, right? And I would speak. So I used to do about 80 events a year, and I used to do about 6 to 8 in-person workshops a year, and I'll do maybe 2 coaching clients a year. And that was my business. And when COVID hit, I thought, oh, this is the end, because my business is so event-based and in-person based. So that as that industry collapsed, you know, I was depressed for a week. And then I just thought, a simple, you know, reminder from a beautiful coach named Coach John Wooden, who's a basketball coach, unfortunately has passed, but he has this brilliant line where he says, if you focus on the things you can't control, you will soon lose control of the things you can control. And I thought, okay, I'm just focusing all of the things I can't control right now. Okay, shut that side out. Let's just focus on the things you can control. You can control building a virtual studio. You can control learning how to get better on a virtual platform. You can control the better showmanship that's involved. You can control, like, so I wrote all the things I could control down. And I built the studio. And little did I know that this was about to be the best career move that I've ever made. And I hate saying this in a time where so many people are suffering, but I won't sugarcoat it just because I believe progress is inspiration for others. And it's that my business has never done better, but not just financially, but mental health wise for me. Every time I did an event, that equated to 2 days away from my family. I had to get on a plane and I had to sleep in a hotel when I was away from my family. Now I did recently an event for a client of mine, QuickBooks, which had 36,000 people in the audience online. And I did a 1-hour keynote followed by a masterclass for them. And then I was 12 steps to my wife in the kitchen and had breakfast with them. Whereas before I was gone for 48 hours. I've built a business that has become more successful, that I'm also more in love with. Because again, a useful belief, anything really is possible in this life, and reality truly is negotiable. Like, you can negotiate it. Whereas so many of us go, oh, I can't, like, it is what it is. There's nothing I can do. And then I think, well, sure, that's a belief. And whether that's true or not, you don't know. So why not adopt a more useful belief? So to me, I feel very lucky, but at the same time, man, I've put in the work, Rob. Like, the hundreds of hours that I've spent in the studio by myself, getting so upset at why is this camera not focusing? I don't understand. And then having to watch countless hours of YouTube. Why is this switcher not working? Why does my audio come through weird? Why does this happen? And like just to stop the echoing thing, to me was like a 4-day problem solving venture, you know? And so to me, I don't know this tech stuff, but I learned it. And we live in a world now where the answers are online.
Yeah, and that analogy that you used, I use it with my team and my family. Focus on the things you can control, not the things you cannot control. I mean, these are things that, same thing. It's especially when we got into COVID, that's the first thing I said. I'm like, focus on the things we can control, not the things we
Yeah.
can't. Everybody's trying to control things they can. That's what that comes into. And I also use the analogy of the Einstein analogy of doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different
Insanity.
results. And that's
It's
what,
insanity.
yeah, it's insanity. It is insanity. And that's why I bring that up all the time. Like, guys,
Yeah.
even though it's a new year, we have new goals. This is the same thing we need to evolve, change the things. And you guys, expect, and it comes because we get habitual. We're habitual creatures. Humans don't like to change. It's in our DNA. We just sometimes don't like to change. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm stubborn too. I don't like to change either. Some way, there's
Me too. I'm human. I don't like to change.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the thing of change. We don't, and but at the end of the day, it's the power of showing, leading, influencing them to show them the way. We all fail. Show them that, having the empathy. As always, Mr. Gary V is lead with empathy. He always puts that out there. Lead with that. These are the things that come, and a lot of, as people say, is why I read a lot or listen to a lot of books. A lot of these things, and I always push my team, even my family and friends. You guys should enhance your skill sets in anything you do, because it not only affects your life or career, it affects your family, communication, your friendships. Invest in your skills. Invest in the things that you do, the tools. Listen to inspiration. Follow. Listen to these days. Everything's podcast. News is no one listens to news because it's chaos. So listen to podcasts. Listen to inspirational. Listen to what you do. Get on. Spend 20, 30 minutes a day of changing the perspective. Seeing things from a different angle. And there's so many tools out there allowed. Sometimes people they don't know where to look. So try to force my family, friends, team, everybody. Here it is. But at the end of the day, you can't push them. You can just lead them, and it's up to them what to do with it.
I love it. I love that you are a fan of Einstein too. He has so much wisdom, and I love that you're pushing those around you to grow. I mean, I think I used to have. This was something my uncle told me once, which I thought was really inspiring, and it's related to what you just said. He said, "I'm pushing." I had a very wonderful uncle. His name's Carr. And he used to always push me, and it was always push me. And as a kid, I used to be like, "Can you stop? Like, I'm tired." And he goes, "Look, let me tell you something, boy. The day I stop pushing you is the day I stop caring about you. When the people around you all stop pushing you, the people around you have stopped caring about you. Be grateful for this, because there will be a day that I may stop caring about you." And I was like, "Oh shit!" Like, I remember that was a really vivid moment for me. And now when everyone around me, my good friends, my mentors, when they push me, I'm like, this is an act of love. They're pushing me because they love me. And now imagine there are souls out there, and this is the truth. This is reality. There are souls out there where no one around them is pushing them. No one is. And why? It's because no one cares.
Yeah.
No one cares whether that person grows or succeeds or not. So we've got to remember to be grateful for that. Be grateful for the leaders around us that keep pushing us, because they still care. And if you keep telling people to stop pushing you, then you're literally telling them to stop caring.
I love it, Vin. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
I will get the.
Hey, no worries.
Thank you so much for this. This has been so inspiring. I think we can talk for days, of course.
Yeah, I really think we can.
We share a lot of similarities and go through things, but thank you so much for coming on. Thank you for taking
Pleasure.
and sharing your wisdom and everything that and your skill set, and sharing with the public and what you do out there. It's amazing. And I always look forward to more. And I'd love to have you on again, even chit chat, come on, do things together. Cause again, we're humans. We need to connect.
Yeah,
and
absolutely. And
as I said, these podcasts for me, every person I talk to is like a book. It's like reading a book. It's like, I get so much information. I know yourself too. You talk to a lot of people, you learn, you engage, you influence, you learn, and others influence you. And it just, knowledge is key. And always, my father always said is knowledge, equals success and health. And while these are the things, it is the knowledge can really help us, but it's also how we apply it. So a lot of these things you can be one of the very smartest person, but if you don't apply it right, if anything else, nothing's going to come out of it. So thank you so much. And
my pleasure.
As I said, we'll share all our things in the links for how people could reach you, get to your website again. Did you just recently update that? It's your website's fantastic.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I've got my own personal website. Then I've got the stage
Yeah,
website. So
yeah.
I've got two. Yeah.
I've been on your personal website. I love your personal website. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
It's
Thank you.
thought leader speaker compared to some others out there who supposedly
Yeah.
yours is inspirational, hits the point,
Yeah.
shows
Thank you.
you. Really, really good. I really appreciate that. We'll share that to everybody listening, put it all in the links, and yeah, and we'll go from there. For once, yeah. Go
And
ahead.
look, if I could just share one final thought, it's something that I've been thinking about quite a bit, and it's just this: so many people right now starve motivation and starve inspiration, and I just want to share a thought that I had that has helped me, and we can end on this, and it's that to me, when we lack inspiration and when we lack motivation, generally I find that comes from a lack of clarity. When we are not clear on what we are meant to do, when we're not clear on what we need to do, we tend to then lack the feeling of inspiration and motivation to get the things done. I mean, think about it. It's simple as that. So just remember that, like, being inspired or being driven or being motivated, there are many different definitions for it, but to me, it's just clarity. Get clarity on what you want to do. Get clarity on what you want to achieve. Know what knowledge you need to attain to then lead to the actions that you need to take. Because once you have the right knowledge and you understand what you have to do, that's when inspiration and motivation comes about. Motivation and inspiration isn't just about sitting there and listening to a podcast, or, this wonderful feeling of enlightenment will come about you. No, it requires you to go and build on your knowledge and build on your ability. Because again, knowledge will enhance clarity. And once you have more knowledge, clarity becomes more enhanced, and then you will feel more inspired. And inspiration isn't one of those things that just get to those people who are lucky. No, you can have it too. Just build on your knowledge and work out what actions you need to take, and you will feel inspired and motivated as a result.
That's it. And as we leave
Yeah.
it, everybody be smart, be thoughtful, be generous. Till our next real talk. Thanks, Vin. Thanks a lot for your time.
Cheers.